Okay, let's continue. So we are building now further on top of what we had already built in the previous tutorial. So this is our final chart that was looking that we had created in our previous tutorial. Let me just quickly print it again. G6, and this is how it looked like. So what we had done so far, we have built a scatter plot from the scratch where x-axis represents the number of balls played by Sachin in a World Cup innings and the number of runs he scored on the y-axis. I have specified the title, subtitle, and the caption. I have modified the color, font, size of title, subtitle, and caption. At the same time, I have modified the title appearing in the x-axis and the y-axis, and these values representing at the x-axis and the y-axis. So this is all done using the theme function. Now, another thing that we did, we modified the legends. So we have two legends, one which represents the color of the data point. So the color is governed by the World Cup year in which that innings was played, and the size represents the number of runs scored in that particular innings. So we have two legends, and the heading of the legends we have modified. And another thing that we have modified is the labels that appear in the legend. So these are our custom labels, not the actual values what are present in the data frame. And the colors that are appearing are the custom colors that we had or the manual colors that we had specified. Another thing we have changed is the labels appearing for this size. So instead of numeric values, I am specifying the values in the textual format. So this is what we have done so far. Now we'll now continue to build on top of it. So now this chart forms our base chart. Okay, so how do we change the style of the legend and the text? Again, we'll use the theme function. So what we have to do, we can use legend.title and we can set its size as 12. Let's say color as fire brick. So and then we are setting the text of size 10 and legend key. I'm just filling it up with yellow. So let me just quickly execute this and we'll compare the output with the code. So I'm executing this and storing in the object G7, and let me just quickly print G7. So let's compare what we have got now with the code. So what we have done here is we have specified the legend title should be of size 12 and color the fire brick. So if you see, the legend titles are now of size 12 and they are now appearing in a colored format. The color that we have specified is the fire brick color. That is fine. The legend text, so the text that is appearing is of size 10. So this particular text is of size 10. And what we have done is legend key. So these are the keys. This is a key that is what is being represented. These keys I want, what I've done is I have specified element underscore rectangle. So I've created a rectangle for these keys and I'm just filling that rectangle with the yellow color. So these keys are now highlighted using rectangle with a yellow color as the base color. So this way we have modified our legends. Now let's continue further. Now, if we want, we can hide the legend. If we want, we can make the legends appear in a different position. Like instead of on the right side, I can make it appear on the left side, top or bottom of the charts. So let's see if you want to hide the legends. You don't want to display it. Ideally, it doesn't happen, but let's say if you want to hide it for some reason, then just simply say legend.position equals to none under this theme function and it will hide all the legends. We'll just simply get the data points on it. The problem of hiding the legend is you cannot now distinguish like what these colors are representing and what is the size representing here. Probably size you can still guess by saying that okay, the higher the runs is scored, the bigger is the size of the circle, but definitely you cannot guess what these what does these color represent. So definitely we need at least a legend for these colors. Okay, now to add a text. Now let's say in this particular chart I want to add a text. So basically my requirement is whenever Sachin has scored a century in a World Cup match, I want those dots should you know should have text also along with the dot. So what I'm doing here is I'm just first creating a another data frame which has all the data whenever Sachin scored a century. So I'm just using the base data frame df, and I am filtering it whenever his runs scored in that innings was greater than equals to 100, and storing it in another data frame called df underscore sent. Now using this particular df underscore sent, I will be uh, displaying the text. So how to do this? Now we have our G7, the base plot, and now I want to add text on top of that graph. So I'm using this geom underscore text. What I have to specify in this aesthetic is the label. Label should represent the runs. So it means whatever runs he scored in that innings, whenever he scored century, I want that should appear on the chart. So his actual runs and the size of that particular text should be bigger for the higher runs he scored. And this data is coming from df underscore sent. So this data is coming from here, and if I execute this, this is what we get here. So Sachin scored a century here, 140, 127, 137, 152. So it means all those data points which we wanted to highlight with some text also are appearing. But right now if you see this text and these dots are exactly overlapping each other, so it's not very much clear, but definitely text is appearing for whenever he scored centuries. Another thing we can do, instead of simply text, we can use the label. So the only thing that will change is, instead of geom underscore text, we can use another label, which is geom underscore label. Same thing, under the aesthetic we have to specify the label. The label should represent the runs, and data is coming from df underscore sent data frame that we had created. So let's execute this and see what we get. So this is different from what we got earlier. So instead of um, those text appearing, we are getting labels actually, and these labels are telling, okay, these were the innings when he scored centuries, and this is the score he made in that particular centuries score. Okay, now let's go back to our previous case when we were getting text and at the same time circle, and they were kind of overlapping each other. Now if you want to just separate those out, just create some repel. So let's use this library ggRepel, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use with G7 base object a function called as geom underscore text underscore repel, and within this I'm specifying this aesthetic label equals to run. So this is, so basically the label that I want, or the text I want to be represented, should be based on the run C code, and the data should come from df underscore sent data frame, storing it in another object as g8 and printing it out. So let's do this, g8, and print it out. Okay, so this is better. So if you see, we see circles here and the runs scored, and so all those century innings are clearly visible. There is no overlap as such between the circle and the text. So this is much better compared to what we were getting earlier in terms of when there was overlap. So this is, so this we have done using the function geom underscore repel underscore geom underscore text underscore repel. Okay, now adding annotations. So if I want to add some specific annotation, let's say if you want to add certain text in the chart, then we can do this using the annotation. So let's add one library gg library grid. Okay, so the text I want to add is wow innings against Pakistan. So there was one particular innings Sachin played against Pakistan in the World Cup, in which he didn't get century. He was out on 98, but by far his that inning is remembered by every Indian and obviously by every Pakistanis also. They were thrashed by Sachin in that particular innings. So I want to highlight that innings. Yeah, even though he didn't get century, but it was such a classic innings that I really want to highlight it. So okay, so let's do it. So I've got this text which says wow, and then let me put exclamation mark, and it was innings against Pakistan, just to highlight that particular innings he did against that particular country. So the G8 is the object that we had created earlier. Now using that G8, I am adding another layer on top of it using annotate. So annotate is a function name, and what I want, the type of annotation I want is the textual annotation, and so I'm specifying it is text, and I want my label should be what I'm specified here is underscore my text. So label will be based on my underscore text variable, and at which location that it should appear, I'm specifying the location as 75 and 98. So basically he played 75 balls in that particular innings and scored 98 runs. So this is exactly what I want to highlight at that specific location. And let me just save it in the object G9, and I am okay. Let me first initialize it, my underscore text, and create this G9, and I'm really looking forward to see that. What an innings. Okay, so there it is. So you can see this particular textual annotation appearing right here that this was the innings. It was very close to century, not exactly century, but it was worth more than century by any way, by any means. So this is what I have just displayed here. Okay, let's continue further. Now I want to do some more highlighting in this chart. Now in all the innings, whenever he scored century, I want some rectangular area to be represented to be represented there. So let me use another annotation which is a rectangle. So what we have to specify is the x min and x max. So basically, so as we know, in the rectangle we have four corners. So starting side of the x-axis, and it will go on the x-axis up to the x max value. Similarly, on the y side, on the y-axis, it will have minimum and the maximum value, and that's how it will get its four corners, and it will form a rectangle. And we can specify the color as, let's say, I'm specifying color is pink, and alpha is 0.6, that is transparency, which is represented by alpha. I don't want it to be solid, I want it to be transparent, so that's why I'm specifying alpha is 0.6. So alpha 1 represents solid. Let's do this and store in a variable in another graphical object G10 and print it out. So let's display it. So there you go. So you see all these centuries. I wanted it to be explicitly highlighted using a rectangle. So this is getting highlighted by this rectangle annotation. So anybody seeing this chart, okay, he will immediately notice his centuries and obviously his this annotation text. Okay, now going back, we can add another annotation, which is a segment. Segment basically it's like drawing a line on the chart where we can specify the starting x and the x where it ends, and on the y-axis where it should start and end, and the color of the line and the size. And okay, so another thing that we can do is using annotate is the point range. So let me draw this, and we'll go through the output, and then we'll compare with the code. So I'm executing it and storing it in the object G11 and printing it out. So there you go. So what you see here is this particular line. This is coming from this. First is annotate segment. So this is the segment. What I have specified is x30 to x end is 120, and on the y side I have specified 50 and 50. So basically I want this segment to separate that anything which is any dot which is above or on uh, uh, on this segment represents 50 plus a score. So basically this is separating all the scores below this line are less than 50. Anything above this particular segment is 50 plus. Yeah, so that's the separation. Another thing what I did was to use a point range. So if you see this particular dot and appearing here, and with this particular these kind of whiskers appearing to it, so that's the point range that I've specified. So how do you do this? You specify the x and the y location, so it will exactly come here, and then you specify the length of this particular line, so that we specify using ymin and ymax. So I wanted to highlight that particular innings which he played against Pakistan, so that is what I'm doing here. Cool. Okay, so too many things we have covered so far.